Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Manga Chapter review. This one's going to be for Chapter 40, which is called The Invisible Jutsu. First of all, apologies for not being on camera for this review. It's pretty dark at this point when the chapters come out, so rather than putting out a video where it just has terrible lighting, I'd rather just do the audio with some images to make it easier. So, overall thoughts on the chapter before we go through it page by page. It's one of those chapters where I think page by page as you go through it, it's good. Like there's no obvious like problems. I think the problem is like when you get to the end of this chapter, it kind of feels like I wish a little bit more happened. I wish they'd used the page count a little bit better. That Boruto in general as a manga is in a pretty good place right now because of the plot that we're dealing with. There's some pretty big stuff happening. The villains are really kind of revealing themselves, and we're getting to see what they're about and what their goals are, see them in action. That's very cool. That's very interesting. I think the problem is that here is the format, the pacing of the book holding a very interesting story back a little bit, in my opinion. If you've seen my reviews before, you probably know that that's a fairly common criticism for me with the Boruto manga, is that I haven't been particularly impressed over the run of the 40 chapters so far with the monthly format. I think it's sort of caused more problems than any sort of solutions that it has, because it doesn't feel like they're kind of pacing it like a monthly manga. It feels like they're still pacing it as if they were sort of doing it weekly, in that most of the chapters don't really feel like they're sort of 4 chapters, kind of, a month's worth of weekly chapters. Most of the time they barely feel like 2, if even that. And I think that's where this chapter, I think, comes up, in that, Boro in the middle of this says a couple of interesting things that get you thinking. But I do feel there's a lot of just like panels that don't really need to be there. A lot of page count that's maybe just wasted when it could be used for a little bit more. And so when you get to the end of this chapter and they're like, yeah, the new Team 7, including Kawaki, we're gonna work together with some enhanced teamwork and like figure out what his jutsu is. It just kind of feels like if you'd used the page count a little bit better here, you could have probably given us at least part of the explanation of his jutsu in this chapter, because while it's the start of the fight, it's 30 plus pages of fighting here. Like, I get that it's just one chapter, but it's a long chapter and most of the chapter is the fight. So I think we pretty much got out of the opening stage of the fight already here, and if the page count was just a little bit better, we could have got towards the explanation, in that I think this chapter would be better if we came out of this chapter having a little bit more of a sense what his jutsu is. Because the chapter's called The Invisible Jutsu, and I think it's fine to expect some part of the explanation, not just like, oh, he calls it Dark Cloud, they call it like Dark Mist, and you get some speculation about what's going on. I just wish a little bit more happened, and it's just a kind of common criticism I have with the Boruto manga, is just that some of these fights, when they start off, the pacing is very, very slow at the start, and they don't really use the page count very well, and they've done this a few times. Like Naruto Delta, I thought was not the best paced fight. Even parts of the Naruto Sasuke Jigen fight weren't the best paced as well, where they just spent a bunch of time like wasting pages on like just standard taijutsu, and it's like, we know this isn't going to be like how the fight comes to an end, and like just you use the page count a bit better ultimately. But like I said, page to page it's fine. It's just I think they need to motor on a little bit. So let's get into it. First 2 pages are just sort of a recap back in the Leaf Village. Shikamaru getting the information. Sasuke is back in the village, seriously injured, unconscious currently, but he is being healed. But the question now is, like, how long is it going to take Sasuke to be healed? When will he wake up again? And will he have enough chakra when he wakes up to use time, space, ninjutsu straight away again? So we could be waiting a while for Sasuke to get in. At the very least, this confirms Sasuke is not going to be turning up in like the next chapter to help the team. So that's an interesting one here. And then, of course, while Sasuke is out here, like, did he get a chance to like tell Sakura that like Naruto's been captured? Can she relay anything to anyone? How long is it going to be before they find out like the full scope of, you know, Naruto being like sealed away fully and stuff like that, you know, the full magnitude of what's just happened. We move from there back to over into the other dimension, where we have, of course, the encounter with Boro here, who has the sealing jar that Naruto is in, shrunken down, of course. And the first back and forth, primarily it's Boro and Kawaki talking here. He wonders how they got here, since you can only get here with time, space, and jutsu. Kawaki, sort of rude as ever, just, you know, is pretty rude about it, doesn't answer him, and says, you know, where is Lord Seven? That's what he wants to know. And this sort of, Boro sort of laughs at this. He's sort of a little surprised that Kawaki is so eager to help Naruto. It surprises me even more that you, who never wags his tail at anyone, has warmed up so much to him. So he's surprised that Kawaki, given the way he usually is, has managed to sort of grow to care about and respect Naruto that much, despite not knowing him that long. It just highlights Naruto's personality and that effect that he has on people. So he then informs to them that, like, look, the Hokage is inside this. This is indeed the sealing thing that we saw Jigen put him in from a few chapters ago. And he basically throws it over to them, like, you know, check this out, basically. Like, look at it all you want. Only Jigen can undo the seal. So, in terms of opening it up in the normal way, you'd open a sealing kind of thing, only Jigen can do that. He obviously has the sealing sort of formula that will open it up. And then don't bother trying to crack it open, because you'll probably, like, break what's inside as well. So they're just, you know, getting the obvious answers out of the way in terms of, like, if you break the outside, you'll likely destroy everything inside. So that's not an option, meaning that getting Jigen to open it up is really the only way. But then you sort of think about, like, oh, well, Kawaki is, like, the next vessel for Jigen, or Ishiki, whichever you want to call him. So he might have enough of a connection where, like, if he spent enough time, he might be able to also undo the seal, but it depends on the specifics. But it's at least an option to think about, for sure. So Kawaki touches the jar, and he does sense Naruto's chakra and confirms that he's definitely alive in there, so that's good. But while they're all looking at the jar, they realize they've lost sight of Boro. And this is where the attack comes in. This is where the fight starts. And this is also where I'll note, there's about 34 or so pages left in the chapter here. Again, trying to get that point across with the pacing. Like, we're still super early in the chapter. So, like, any sort of excuse for this chapter that, like, oh, it's only the start of the fight. Like, we get a lot of the fight here. Like, they could have done a little bit more. But anyway, let's go through it. So he opens up with a lava-style planet branding blast as he sort of cracks open the earth. This acid comes out. We see Sarada using the Sharingan to watch and avoid it, which, interestingly, here they reveal that she has the 3 Tomoe, or however you pronounce it, the Tomoe, on her Sharingan, so all 3 parts of it, whereas I think previously we'd only seen her with 1. I know people have said in one of the novels, I think it's the Sasuke Shinden or whatever it is, one of the more Boruto era novels, it is confirmed she has these at roughly this point. But again, the manga hasn't covered this, the anime hasn't yet covered this sort of stuff. So for a lot of people, this will be like this kind of reveal that Sarada actually has sort of, like, in a way, like, mastered the standard Sharingan in terms of having all 3 of those Tomoe in her eye. So it's weird that, like, this is our first time kind of seeing it in a way, and it's also no one kind of points it out really. So it does get across the idea, as we'll see a few times over the course of this fight, Sarada is watching Boro with the Sharingan. So they're setting up sort of where the explanation of the jutsu is going to come from, but then it kind of is weird at the end of the chapter that they just have Sarada say, oh, we'll figure it out, as if, like, all her looking has just led to nothing. It kind of feels a bit weird, but we'll go through. So with the acid, Kawaki gets worried that the acid will break the jar that Naruto's sealed in, so he uses the karma mark to absorb it to sort of protect Naruto, just in case the acid, you know, shatters the thing and kills Naruto. So while he does that, he's sort of at risk, and the acid is coming for Kawaki this time, and he can't dodge it. This is where Boruto, comes in, blocks it, and absorbs it with his own karma mark. So, kind of cool sequence of the two karma mark users just absorbing some jutsu. And this is where Boro kind of notes, like, there we have Boruto's karma. Seems Delta was telling the truth after all, that you do indeed have one. So he urges Boruto to attack him. Boruto goes for a Rasengan, charges straight in, and this is where we get the setup for this invisible jutsu. So he does some hand signs here as Boruto charges in. So he's sort of preparing for it as Boruto comes at him. Boruto delivers the Rasengan, he hits it dead center, sends Boro kind of flying back. He big impact on the Rasengan here, has clearly done some damage as it's like torn through his clothes, the usual sort of smoking hole that it leaves, and he's kind of crouched over, like he got hit, and he even acknowledges that, like it sure packs a punch, but almost immediately it just sort of regenerates, it heals over like super quick, and it's like after just the initial impact of it, he's just perfectly fine again. Kawaki then immediately charges in, going like, okay, we'll just hit him enough so that he doesn't have a chance to regenerate. Again, as Kawaki charges in, Boro once again does the hand signs, and this time we get 100% confirmation. Sarada is watching those signs with the Sharingan, both eyes, so she sort of sees what's going on here. Boruto again takes the hit here from Kawaki's, crazy arm kind of modification, manipulation stuff, and he kind of slams him around a bit here. And he urges Boruto to team up with him for a sort of tag team blow, so it'll hit him at the same time. But right as they go to deliver the blow, they sort of both collapse as if they've just run out of energy, or something is like completely sapped all their strength. They're on the ground. And this is where Boro starts to sort of smile, like, that's what you get for charging in recklessly, fools. Here's where we start to see these sort of wisps of black kind of flying around in the background. They really start to emphasize them here, and they note that this is this dark mist, or Boro will call it later dark cloud. So this is this invisible jutsu, and they sort of do some interesting stuff here where Kawaki is unable to absorb it with his karma mark, so it begs the question of like, wait, if this thing can absorb any jutsu, he's used hand signs to make this happen, what's going on? Like, how is this possible? Why can't he absorb it? So Boro comes in, slams Kawaki all over the place while Boruto's still down on the ground, and Sarada just kind of notes, like, this is bad. He's been doing signs, he's been weaving signs a lot. It has to be a jutsu, but why can't it absorb it? So she's kind of figuring this stuff out. Boro seems in complete control, and he reveals here, or he says out loud, Boruto, son of Hokage, and Otsutsuki Momoshiki's vessel. I'm so happy I got to meet you. I haven't been this happy since Kawaki first showed up. And Boruto's like, Momoshiki's vessel? Thanks to you, the time limit that was urgently pressing on our plans might well have been lifted. I'm eternally grateful. I'll take you back along with Kawaki and treat you with care. And yeah, this is when Mitsuki comes in. But it is interesting here that, like, okay, we know he's one of the sort of inners in Kara, Boro here, so he obviously knows what's going on. So, the whole idea of like Ishiki Otsutsuki is, he's just using Jigen as a vessel. Kawaki is the next vessel for Ishiki. Boruto is the vessel for Momoshiki. And so this is sort of Boruto's first time really hearing this, like, about himself and his own karma mark, that he is indeed a vessel. But it is interesting that, like, Jigen didn't seem to know all that much about, like, the other karma mark necessarily. Like, there's another user out there, but he didn't know much details. So it is interesting that Boro knows that, like, oh, other karma mark user, it's Momoshiki straight away. So you sort of wonder how much Otsutsuki stuff do all these characters know. But anyway, as Boro is leaning over Boruto, this is where Mitsuki comes in with some wind style to try and force him away. The wind style doesn't blow the clouds away. I would think it would be obvious, but it doesn't. So, this is where it again gets across the invisible idea of this. And he says, sorry, you can't get rid of my dark clouds with mere wind. It's already eating away at your body too, so escape while you can. Mitsuki, child of Orochimaru. This is where Mitsuki attacks with lightning style snake lightning. Boro defends with water style wall of water. But this is just a distraction as Mitsuki puts his sort of snake arms around the sides of the water wall and kind of constricts Boro. But this was also just a distraction to have one of the snakes bite Boro and infect him with the venom. So this is pretty clever. But then again, Boro just uses the hand signs and the snake bite goes away. I assume the venom just kind of evaporates or whatever. And Mitsuki's attack also hasn't worked. He's just been effortlessly doing this either way. Like before the attack comes in or after the attack comes in, it doesn't matter for him. They also note that being exposed to this dark mist for too long is bad, getting across the idea that it seems to be energy sapping in nature. Boro notes that, it's only the 2 vessels that I'm after. He doesn't care if he has to kill Mitsuki and I suppose Sarada to get what he wants. This is when Sarada comes in, huge slab of stone here. She sends flying at Boro with her strength, and this just creates a bit of separation between everyone. She gets in, she grabs Kawaki, Mitsuki grabs Boruto, and they sort of retreat for now. They do a temporary retreat here, and this is when they have a bit of a discussion here that Sarada has to point out that we would have been wiped out. We have to plan this out. We're not running away, we just have to think about this. We need to figure out his jutsu first, and to do that we all have to stop getting ahead of ourselves. The basic tenet of shinobi is teamwork, remember, and we're going to use the teamwork of our revamped cell number 7, Team 7, and that is Team 7 plus Kawaki. All 4 of them are going to work together now, and not just sort of charge in one by one. And that ends the chapter. It's one of those chapters, like I said, where it's building up, pretty nice. And then the decision to do the retreat, it makes logical sense. I just think it's a sort of unfortunate place to end a chapter on, that you have to have the cliffhanger ending literally be the idea that we will figure this out next, instead of using these 2 pages to even have Sarada give her thoughts on what she thinks it is, what she thinks he's doing. I just would have liked to have seen some sense of that, given that the chapter was about and called the Invisible Jutsu, and that was the thing that turned the tides of the battle. It just feels like a very kind of dull way to just end the chapter on the idea of we're going to use teamwork now, and it's okay, great, that's Naruto 101, teamwork. But I just felt it could have been a little bit more revealing in what it did towards the end. But like I said over the course of it, there is some interesting stuff, like Boro talking to Boruto about Momoshiki's vessel, the time limit on their plans, which I'm going to assume is mainly the idea of they need Kawaki to become a complete vessel before Jigen breaks, so Ishiki has a new vessel. And what they needed to happen there was for the karma mark that Kawaki has to develop, mature, which is happening at an accelerated rate because Boruto also has a karma mark and they're together. I think that's what he's kind of referring to with regards to the time limit might be lifted now. I think, anyway. At least based on the information we have right now, I think that's what it is. It was interesting to have, Sarada, use the full Sharingan here. But again, 3 or 4 panels where she's watching him, and then you end with the idea of her just saying, we need to figure it out. And it's what were all those panels for, of just her watching him? I assume they'll come back to it in the next chapter, but it felt like there should have been some, bookmarking of the chapter in a way with she sees it here, she comes up with an idea here, and then during the next stage of the battle is where she properly figures it out, or something like that. Other than that, some details on Naruto's sort of sealing jar thing of only Jigen can open it up. Okay, that makes sense. There might be some connection with Kawaki potentially being able to open it up depending on what happens, and then you can't just break it open with force. They're basically saying that the easy way out, basically, you can't just do that. That's not going to work. Beyond that, Sasuke is going to be out of action, so don't expect to see him anytime soon re-entering the battle. So it's still the plot-wise, we're still in a great spot in Boruto, because who knows what's going to happen next in terms of this is a pretty big fight that we have here. In that Boro is a very skilled opponent, has lava style, seems very skilled, has some mysterious jutsu, Kara inner member, but he also seems like, if the team shows off some new powers or something like that, that he could be beatable, because it is 4-on-1, and 2 of them have karma marks, and then Mitsuki has sort of untapped power that kind of puts him on a really high level with the Sage Jutsu thing. So like we do, like when our characters are firing in all cylinders, basically, I think have the firepower to take out someone this good. In that, like, I don't think we're just like utterly outmatched in all of this, but like I said, I think good chapter, but held back a little bit just with the way that this manga does pacing. And I'm not trying to say that I think every chapter of Boruto should just reveal like everything at once and just have the fastest pacing in the world. It's more of just a general thing with Boruto as a manga, where I feel overall like Boruto could use its pages a little better to get more information across, and have some of the chapters not feel as like wasteful as they end up feeling, which I think is a fair enough point, because like a lot of people have only like really heavily gotten into the hype of Boruto with the last couple of chapters, and so there was a lot of criticism of it like before we got into the really good stuff, and people were fine with it then. But because we have better content now, I don't think it just immediately excuses the fact that the pacing problems are still there, but we're still in a good spot overall. So there are my thoughts on chapter 40. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. What do you think they're going to reveal Boro's jutsu to be? What do you think is going to happen next? But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.